Discover the incredible love story that transformed a billionaire and his mother's life, one surprising inheritance that changed everything. Jake Harper could feel the weight of his dreams pressing down on him like the poorly insulated roof of their cramped Illinois apartment. He had spent years cultivating his vision for a groundbreaking tech gadget, an invention that promised to change lives. Yet every time he spoke of it, his peers' laughter rang like cruel cymbals in his ears. They dismissed him as just another daydreamer, a tech nerd lost in fantasy, while Lucy, his mother, tirelessly worked her shifts as a nurse, embodying the hard work he desperately wanted to honor. But his fear lingered like shadows creeping across the walls. What if he never succeeded? Just as discouragement began to take hold, a letter arrived, and with it, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. He had inherited a dilapidated estate from a distant relative he barely knew. Excitement surged, a wild pulse of adrenaline rushing to his head. Yet, beneath the thrill was a gnawing uncertainty. What secrets did the property hold? Was this a chance for growth or merely a shackle to his haunted family history? As Jake and Lucy began the arduous task of cleaning up the estate, the neglected rooms whispered of betrayals and secrets, each dusty trunk, each ancient photograph. Discovering them felt like opening a Pandora's box. The letters revealed tales of sorrow and discrimination woven into their lineage, unraveling his understanding of family and identity. Could he bear to face the truths hidden in this new chapter? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let us continue, but then fate punched through the chaos. His tech prototype finally garnered interest from an influential investor. A chance for success lay at his fingertips, a glittering prize shimmering in the distance. Yet, along with it came the pressure. What if chasing this dream meant abandoning the family legacy they had just begun to unearth? Every night, Jake would pace, biting his nails, the weight of it all crushing, the urgency of the offer colliding violently with the remnants of family lore they were unearthing. What was he willing to sacrifice? Every moment spent focusing on his invention pulled him further from the estate's mysteries. The deeper he probed, the more conflicted he felt. The idea of wealth should have filled him with joy, but it twisted in his gut like a tempest of doubts. Would Lucy take pride in his success if it meant neglecting the truths of their ancestry? Were they destined to be shackled to the ghosts of the past, or could he forge his own path, breaking free? As he stood in the once grand hallway, engulfed by the weight of memories and new possibilities, he felt a sense of panic rising. What awaited him ahead, the chance to succeed or a return to a painful past? The walls seemed to close in on him, muttering the unresolved fears of their family legacy as he fought to define his own. Awaiting him was a choice that could forever alter him, not only as an inventor but as a son. As Jake paced the creaking wooden floors of the estate, he wrestled with a swirling storm within. The gnawing weight of expectation pressed against him, the potential of becoming the visionary he always aspired to be clashed violently with the echoes of his family's struggles. What good is success if it erases the very foundation from which it springs? It was an unsettling dichotomy that left him restless at night, turning over possibilities in his mind yet finding no comfort in any of them. With hollow determination, Jake returned to his tech lab, nestled in a small corner of the estate's garage. Equipment lay scattered, tools, circuits, and screens glowing with half-finished programming. For a moment, the familiar landscape of wires and components soothed him, a world of logic where dreams could manifest into reality. But even as he opened his laptop, ready to dive into coding, the haunting remnants of his family's past lingered like an unwelcome guest. That he pulled up the design plans for his gadget, a sleek interface meant to simplify daily activities, to offer those overwhelmed by life a gentle hand. What had started as pure inspiration now seemed laced with trepidation. Summoning courage, he stepped outside, the crisp air invigorating yet heavy with unspoken truths. He needed clarity. That evening, as twilight draped itself over the estate, Jake gathered Lucy in the small garden that had once flourished with vibrant colors. He shared with her the trajectory of his work, the investor interested in his prototype, the potential for wealth and recognition. But instead of excitement, he saw concern etched across her brow. It struck him with brutal clarity: she was just as tangled in the webs of their lineage as he was. "Mom, I need you to be honest with me," he requested. "What do you think? Should I pursue this funding opportunity, or is it something I'll regret?" Lucy's gaze drifted to the estate, shadows falling across her face. "Jake, life doesn't come without its sacrifices. Your father and I worked hard to provide for you, but sacrifices don't just erase memories. They shape them." Her words struck like a bolt of lightning. They were reflections of everything he'd been grappling with. Modern success was alluring, practically hypnotic, yet it was blurred by shadows of his legacy. Could he truly achieve his dreams without betraying the lessons of perseverance and resilience that had been instilled in him? As the conversation deepened, Jake felt himself arriving at a profound realization: his invention could become a bridge, a way to elevate not just himself but also honor the struggles of his past. He wouldn't have to choose one over the other. He could integrate them, utilize his success to shine a spotlight on the stories entwined with his lineage. There was a possibility of merging the narrative of family with technological innovation. Their talk continued long into the night, revealing layers of emotional conflict and ancestral pride he had failed to recognize fully before. But as they spoke, Jake sensed an urgency rising within him, demanding action. It was time to confront the investor, not as a desperate young man dangling over the edge of success, but as someone who carries the weight of family with him, a powerful legacy blended with ambition. But as dawn approached on the horizon, a new dilemma emerged. He needed to uncover more about his family's story before he could genuinely embrace the future. The secrets of the estate and the lives lived within its walls were calling to him, and he had ignored them long enough. What more could his ancestors teach him about resilience, about courage? Jake felt the pulse of determination reignite. He understood then that to rise, he must first navigate the intricate paths of his heritage. But could he unravel the mysteries awaiting him at the estate before time ran out and choices were made for him? Each choice was a thread weaving together the tapestry of his life. The choices he made next could send ripples through both the past he was discovering and the future he was desperately trying to forge. The weightiness of what lay ahead loomed like a shadow. His heart raced as he set his sights on both the challenge of confronting family truths and the investor's proposal. The moment was approaching where he would have to confront those ghosts head-on. What would he uncover in this relentless pursuit? In the dim light of the garage, Jake's mind raced, spinning tales like the circuits he handled with ease. Each wire he connected felt less like functionality and more like fate, a pathway to reclaiming his identity. But what awaited him buried beneath the history of the estate loomed larger than any coding challenge. The emotional disarray felt almost tangible, pressing against him as he pushed through the short walk to his great-grandfather's study, a room he'd avoided out of uncertainty for too long. The door creaked as he entered, dust motes swirling in the golden light that penetrated the aged drapes. Shelves lined with tattered books and family memorabilia surrounded him, each object seemingly whispering secrets buried under layers of forgetfulness. He approached a heavy oak desk, its surface scratched and worn, yet it had witnessed the weight of decisions that had shaped the lives of generations. He couldn't help but wonder about the ambitions that had fueled his ancestors. Did they, too, wrestle with the duality of desire and responsibility? The answer buzzed in the air as he looked closely at a framed photo nestled among scattered papers. It showed his great-grandfather, proud and indomitable, standing by a similar invention, a device designed to ease farm labor, a testament to innovation rooted in survival. A wave of connection surged through Jake. That sense of continuity ignited a fierce need to link past and present, to draw strength from the trials of those before him. But discovering this connection also sparked a sense of urgency. Could his exploration of family history illuminate a path forward? As he browsed through mementos, he found letters recounting struggles, triumphs, and decisions forged in hardship. The stories exemplified resilience, a mirror reflecting his own pivotal moments of doubt. That he gathered loose papers and sat cross-legged on the floor, searching for details that might forge the bond between his inventions and the invaluable lessons from family history. Page after page unveiled collaboration, setbacks, and an unwavering resolve to build something meaningful, not just for oneself, but for the world beyond. The flicker of connection to his lineage reached an apex as he reached a hastily scribbled note from his great-grandfather, outlining aspirations for future generations. The words struck him hard: create for the world, but honor your roots. The revelation was monumental. His invention, designed to simplify life, could encapsulate the spirit of those who had battled against odds, much like him. The thought ignited a flicker of hope, kindling within him a vision, a means to honor his family while innovating anew. His success, once envisioned as singular, could spark a collective echo through time. The investor would not only support a product but perhaps become part of a legacy, a lineage intertwined with the notion of purpose. Suddenly, a sound broke through his reverie, the sharp ring of his phone, slicing through the thick atmosphere of the study. His heart raced at the thought of the investor, potentially calling with decisions to discuss. The timing felt almost prophetic. But before he could answer, Jake paused, a sinking awareness gripping him. He was playing a role in a much larger story, precariously threading together his family's past with his potential future. The challenge loomed: should he confront the investor now, armed with his newfound understanding, or does he delve deeper into the estate's mysteries? The weight of the past clashed with the urgency of his aspirations. As he answered the call, a tide of uncertainty washed over him. Would he stand confident in his vision, or would echoes of doubt stifle his voice? Jake inhaled sharply, ready to speak as the voice on the other end waited expectantly. But deep down, he knew that whichever path he took would carry the essence of not just innovation, but of family legacies. As he initiated the call, his grip tightened around the phone. This step could pivot the course of everything. How much of the past would inform his present? The answer might redefine everything he thought he knew about legacy. The challenge before him was looming. Would he seize his moment, or would the stories of his family weigh him down in indecision? The silence that filled the study was punctuated by the soft, persistent voice at the other end of the line, pulling Jake back into the present. "Hello? Jake? Are you there?" The investor's tone, laced with impatience, pierced through the fog of introspection that still enveloped him. That he straightened up, a surge of adrenaline coursing through his veins. "Yes, I'm here," he managed to say, aware of a tremor in his voice. He could almost feel the weight of his great-grandfather's legacy pressing down on him, urging him to speak with conviction. "Perfect timing," the investor replied. "We've been discussing your proposal. But I need to know, what do you see as the potential impact of your invention? Why should we invest?" Jake took a breath, conscious of the stakes. He recalled the letters he'd read, the stories of adversity, innovation, and the desire to create something meaningful beyond oneself. This was the moment, his moment. Clarity formed like a beacon in his mind. This project isn't just about functionality. It's about legacy. My great-grandfather made a difference in his community with his creations, aiming to relieve the burdens of others. I want to do the same. My invention will not only simplify lives but also carry the spirit of resilience and innovation that courses through my family's history. Silence lingered on the line, a pause heavy with contemplation. He could almost hear the investor weighing his words, assessing whether there was truth behind them. Jake's heart raced. Was he getting through? Or had he just given some grand speech without substance? "What exactly does your invention do?" came the investor's voice at last, breaking the silence, bringing Jake back to the technical aspects he had nearly forgotten amidst his emotional journey. Jake launched into the specifics, detailing the innovative features, the efficiency it could bring, and how it represented a departure from traditional methods. Each explanation built upon the last, tying back to the foundational theme of honoring one's roots. It's designed not only to help individuals but also to promote community collaboration, he concluded, feeling more confident with every word. Interesting, the investor replied, and Jake could sense his intrigue, though his skepticism lingered. We'll need a more detailed plan, something concrete. Set up a meeting to present the prototype in 2 weeks, the investor said, before adding, let us see if your vision holds up in reality. The call ended abruptly, leaving Jake breathless. The implications rushed over him. The invitation to present was not just an opportunity, it was a summons to rise to the occasion. 2 weeks. He had time to refine and perfect everything, but would the urgency of his lineage and the weight of expectation push him to deliver? He glanced around the study, memories and artifacts beckoning him, illuminating a path filled with both challenge and support. He marveled at the depth of history surrounding him, feeling the fire of his ancestors urging him to succeed. They didn't give up, he whispered, a flicker of determination igniting within him. Then, he was struck by a thought as he sat there, realizing that the upcoming meeting was about more than just the invention or the investment. It was about owning his narrative. It was about leading with intention and confidence, merging his innovation not just with his identity but also with those who had come before him. But beneath the surface, another feeling grew: fear. What if he faltered? What if the past's weight became suffocating instead of inspiring? He stood, the conflicting emotions stirring within him. 2 weeks wasn't just a countdown, it was an odyssey he needed to embark on, a transformation that awaited, and he must navigate the uncertain waters of expectation and anxiety. As he moved to pick up the pile of letters scattered on the floor, he caught sight of a handwritten note tucked inside one of the envelopes. His pulse quickened as he opened it, recognizing the familiar loop of his great-grandfather's handwriting. The note held a single phrase that echoed through Jake's mind: perseverance paves the way for progress. Would he embody that perseverance in the weeks to come? Determined to make his ancestor proud, Jake felt adrenaline surge through his veins anew. With the clock ticking, he realized that to face the investor and seize this opportunity, he would have to confront not just his fears about the invention but also the fears that had held him back all his life. As he braced himself for this journey ahead, uncertainty loomed like a horizon before a storm. The next few weeks would demand everything of him, and he could almost hear the echoes of his family whispering encouragement. Would he find the strength to merge his vision with his resolve, or would he allow the shadows of doubt to cloud his path once again? As morning sunlight streamed through the study's window, Jake felt a mix of exhilaration and dread. The note from his great-grandfather sat heavy in his pocket, as if it were a talisman against the impending storm of expectations. The weight of the meeting loomed larger with each passing hour, demanding not just a refined prototype but a polished presentation of himself. That he fired up a sketch program on his tablet, determined to visualize the invention anew. The glow of the screen illuminated the gaps in his plans. He took a moment to breathe and shifted his focus. What am I really offering? He questioned, narrowing in on the essence of his creation. It wasn't merely mechanics, it was the promise of change and the potential to raise spirits. As he began to draft his pitch, he found himself unraveling layers of ambiguity. He sketched diagrams, jotted down possible questions the investor might ask, and rehearsed his answers. Still, he felt an unsettling undercurrent, a deep-seated concern that perhaps he wasn't enough. The fight against self-doubt was like wading through thick mud, each movement slow and labored. Throughout the day, he oscillated between productivity bursts and paralyzing insecurity. Memories of his great-grandfather's dedication fueled his momentum, but the fear of inadequacy shadowed his progress. When Jake stepped outside for a breath of fresh air, the weight of his thoughts felt lighter against the backdrop of the world moving forward. People on their morning commutes, birds chirping, life continuing steadily as if unaware of his internal chaos. With a small notebook in hand, he paced the sidewalk and began jotting down thoughts. What would the investor value? What resonated with people beyond numbers and charts? It struck him that true impact lay in storytelling. He recalled moments shared with his great-grandfather, tales spun with passion and laughter, and realized he needed to weave those narratives into his presentation. Returning home, Jake began crafting a storyboard for his pitch. Each slide represented more than just data, it showcased the journey behind the invention. He envisioned opening with a personal story, perhaps a moment that had defined his view on innovation. A time he watched his great-grandfather struggle yet persevere against adversity. As night cloaked the sky, Jake sat at his desk, notes sprawled around him, and for the first time in hours, he felt a sense of purpose weaving through his nerves. He wasn't merely fighting for investment, he was fighting to honor a legacy. His fingers flew over the keyboard, shaping words and ideas with newfound conviction. However, As the clock ticked into the early hours, fatigue began to seep into his bones. Amidst the noise of his thoughts, doubt crept back in unwelcome. What if his story failed to resonate? What if he crumbled under the pressure? It was a mental tug-of-war, and each release of uncertainty felt like a ghost whispering reminders of past failures. Just when he thought it impossible to shake off his mental blocks, Jake stumbled upon another letter, one he'd set aside for a day when he could afford the emotional toll. It sprang forward unexpectedly, igniting curiosity. Inside were words of encouragement from his great-grandfather, urging him to embrace every chance, every challenge with fervor. Let every doubt become fuel, he read aloud, and the clarity crystallized in his mind. He didn't merely have to perform, he had to embody the essence of resilience he sought to represent. This was a chance to show not only what he had to offer but who he was. Emboldened, Jake made a pivotal decision. He would not hide behind technical jargon, he'd borrow courage from his lineage and lead with heart. The half-formed ideas that had plagued him began to crystallize, and as he imagined the audience's expressions, he realized he had the opportunity to ignite change not just within himself, but within the lives of others. As exhaustion faded into a sense of renewed purpose, he placed the note back on the desk, triumphant in his newfound clarity. The weeks ahead would test his resolve, but he felt ready. There was too much at stake, not just for him, but for all those simmering stories waiting to be told. But outside, the night air was thick with promise and uncertainty. Would the investor see the potential within his personal journey? Would Jake's story break through the business jargon? As he prepared to close his laptop, his fingers hesitated over the keyboard. This isn't just a product, he thought, it's my family's legacy. And as that thought echoed, a fresh wave of urgency washed over him. The meeting was not just a checkpoint, it was the moment he needed to face, even if it meant confronting more than just an investor, but all the fears he harbored deep inside. Tomorrow marked the beginning of that confrontation, but one question loomed larger than all the rest: could he transform his narrative into a reality before it was too late? The morning light spilled into Jake's room, casting soft shadows across sketches and notes strewn like fallen leaves across his desk. Anxiety tightened its grip as he prepared for what felt like Judgment Day. Each tick of the clock carried a weight of inevitability, but this moment also held the promise of transformation. Today wasn't just about presenting an invention, it was the beginning of a journey within himself. As he stood in front of the mirror, Jake regarded his reflection with a critical eye. Who was he becoming? The person looking back didn't resemble the confident innovator he aspired to be. The lingering self-doubt seeped deep, but the memory of that letter ignited a flicker of resolve. He straightened his posture, imagining the spirit of his great-grandfather guiding him, a steady presence amidst the chaos. The route to the meeting felt like a film in motion, each detail rushed past him, yet time slowed as his thoughts spiraled. What if he faltered? He envisioned the investors, their bored expressions, the murmurs of dismissal. What if the struggles he faced echoed louder than his triumphs? The weight of validation rested heavily, and as he approached the office building, Jake could feel the significance of the moment pressing against him. They greeted him with polite smiles, facades of professionalism masking several unseen dynamics. As he settled into the conference room, his mind raced over the story he had crafted, the narrative that wove familial legacy and personal ambition. He had envisioned it as the vehicle of inspiration, yet now, he grappled with the precarious balance of his vulnerability. With a deep breath, Jake started the presentation. The slides flickered to life, vibrant illustrations of innovation and insight. He navigated the technical details with surprising eloquence, each aspect of the design underpinned by a story he believed in. But as he spoke, a nagging fear lurked at the periphery. His heart raced at the thought of not connecting with the audience. Suddenly, he felt a shift. The initial questions were straightforward, and their responses were polite but lacked the engagement he craved. Then he remembered the advice from his great-grandfather: connect first, persuade second. He turned the slides off and faced them directly, a gamble that could either sink or elevate him. Let me share a story, he began, recounting his great-grandfather's struggles and triumphs, how even in the depths of despair, hope was a force that transformed lives. As he spoke, his voice, once shaky, gained strength. He felt the room shift, the investors leaning in, interested. It wasn't just the product he was unveiling but the heart behind it. Jake's story struck chords of empathy and resonance, revealing the passion behind the invention rather than just its function. The tension in the room thawed, replaced by a palpable interest. It was a risk, exposing himself emotionally, but it also unraveled something profound within him. Each word carried a weight of authenticity that resonated well beyond mere statistics. The investors began to ask deeper questions, not just about the mechanics but about the impact, about the spirit of invention. As Jake responded, he discovered a newfound confidence. Each interaction felt like peeling away the fear that had once kept him shackled. This confrontation was no longer just with the investors, it morphed into an exploration of courage, vulnerability, and truth. Yet, as the discussion deepened, a question from a particularly astute investor pierced through the momentum. "Jake, how do you propose to handle failure if this product doesn't launch as intended?" It was a direct challenge, an invitation for him to confront not just the market but his own limitations. His breath caught, memories of past disappointments flickering uncomfortably in his mind. What if he faltered again? The thought of failure loomed larger than life, but he could feel the strands of doubt unravel. In the face of this challenge, another realization dawned upon him that failure wasn't an end but an opportunity for growth. Gathering himself, Jake replied with an authenticity that surprised even him. He shared how he would embrace setbacks as lessons, adjusting his course as needed. His commitment to resilience blossomed into a defining characteristic and not merely a talking point. The room fell silent as the investors absorbed his words, each expression reflecting a shift in perception. As the meeting drew to a close, Jake felt both exhilaration and an anxiety that was now charged with purpose. He had dared to be vulnerable, unveiling not just a product but a piece of his identity. And in that moment, he realized he had passed a crucial test, the one with himself. The feedback that followed was overwhelmingly positive, but Jake knew this was just the beginning. The real journey lay ahead, filled with uncertainty but now fortified with newfound faith in his ability to overcome. But as he walked out that door, a chilling thought darkened his mind. What would happen if the investor's commitment didn't align with his vision? Would he be ready to fight for it, or would he lose himself once more? The silence of the hallway wrapped around Jake as he exited the conference room. He could still feel the electric charge of the discussion lingering in the air, a heady mix of challenge and possibility. But that tantalizing taste of success was now laced with doubt. What if the excitement faded? What if the investors didn't commit to his vision, confident that they'd listen to a mere dreamer? Jake paused at the elevator, fighting against the tide of anxiety that threatened to swell within him. Another weighty breath filled his chest as he pressed the button and waited. While he had connected with the investors, their glowing feedback had shifted from genuine intrigue to polite praise. Was he just a fleeting thought in their busy minds? He needed clarity on where he stood, both professionally and personally. Each failed attempt in the past had imprinted itself on his psyche, forming a mosaic of fear and frustration that he was determined to break. The elevator arrived, its doors sliding open with a mechanical sigh. He stepped inside, the dim lighting only amplifying his uncertainty as he pressed the ground floor button. With each descent, he reflected on the delicate balance between ambition and authenticity. That question of failure lingered. Could he truly embrace setbacks as learning opportunities? The risk-exposed vulnerability from earlier felt like a fresh scar, still stinging but transforming into a vital part of his narrative. Emerging into the bright openness of the lobby, Jake found himself standing amidst a sea of professionals moving purposefully in every direction. The world outside continued as if he hadn't just shared his heart and vision with a group of strangers. He pulled in a steadying breath. His next steps needed process and intention. Returning to his workspace, he opened his laptop, instinctively seeking to channel his thoughts into action. The lingering fears morphed into a deft challenge. What if he could address those doubts head-on? Researching articles about successful entrepreneurs who had navigated failure felt like a light at the end of a tunnel. Each story he read sparked determination, revealing a tapestry of resilience. Jake staggered between inspiration and the weight of potential disappointment. He realized he had to confront another deep-seated fear, the possibility of losing his initial vision. What if investors wanted to alter his creation beyond recognition? Each hypothetical scenario unfolded ominously in his mind, but one thought stood out. Why couldn't his voice be the grounding force behind the invention? Determined to prepare for the incoming negotiations, he crafted a new outline for the product discussion, one that highlighted not just the mechanical aspects but the essence of its creation. This was not merely about profits but creating something that could leave a legacy, echoing his great-grandfather's impact on innovation. Hours melted into days, and Jake delved deeper into research and refining his pitch. The next meeting with the investors fast approached, an opportunity to embrace the spirit of collaboration without dimming his own vision. Yet, even as excitement charged his brain, the unsettling question circled back. Would his resolve be enough in the moments of pressure? As the day arrived, he rehearsed relentlessly, adapting his narrative to maintain his values while welcoming input. Leaving his apartment, he felt the thrill of stepping towards something profound, the summary of months of toil, vulnerability, and passion, but that eerie apprehension tugged at his core. What if, when faced with critique, he broke? There was a nagging realization that the true test lay not solely in presenting the invention but in standing firm against the storms that might arise. Today would demand not just his invention but the heart and spirit behind it. Jake approached the investor's office, heart racing with every step. Could he protect his vision, or would he concede to pressure? The time had come to face those who held his future in their hands. As he crossed the threshold, Jake steeled himself for battle, not just for his invention, but for his own place in the narrative of his life. Jake stepped into the investor's office, the polished floor reflecting his resolve. The room buzzed with chatter as he was greeted by the well-dressed group, their faces a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. Each of them carried a gravity that amplified his pulse. They were the gatekeepers of his ambitions. He mentally prepared himself for the battle that lay ahead, one that would test his conviction and reshape his professional trajectory. As he settled into the chair, he could feel the weight of their gazes, dissecting him, evaluating not just the pitch but the man behind it. He cleared his throat, steadying his breath as he began. The first words came out with intention, fueled by the countless hours of practice. Today, I'm here to share an innovation that I believe doesn't just represent a product but a movement toward sustainable solutions. Yet, even as his words flowed, Jake's mind raced. He recalled his earlier research, the stories of rejection faced by prominent entrepreneurs before their breakthrough moments. The thought served as both armor and a reminder: the path to success was often paved with setbacks. As he detailed the intricate features of his invention, he couldn't shake the anxiety that coiled around his heart. What if they fixed their gaze on the flaws he feared would emerge? The first question came, sharp and adroit. What differentiates your product in an already saturated market? The investor's tone was direct, steering the conversation into testing waters. Inside, Jake felt the cold seep in, but he had prepared for this. What sets it apart, he replied, is not merely the technology but the intention behind it. This product aims to inspire a shift in consumer behavior, to evoke a sense of duty towards environmental stewardship. Jake's eyes darted around the table, scanning expressions. Did they grasp the significance he felt? The pressure mounted as more queries poured in, each probing deeper into his design and his motivations. And how do you plan to scale this vision? Another investor challenged, arms crossed defiantly. The tide was turning toward criticism, and he braced himself against it. His vision of legacy surged back to the forefront of his mind. Scaling isn't just about numbers, it's about building partnerships that resonate with the core values of our mission. I see this as a collaborative journey rather than a solitary conquest. The words felt empowering on his lips. With every declaration, he was not merely defending his product but reinforcing his personal tenacity, staking a claim to his aspirations. Yet as the questions persisted, Jake was confronted by the shadows of self-doubt. Were his responses landing well, or were they merely echoing in the void of dissent? He could feel a faint tremor in his voice, a brush of vulnerability creeping in. Did they see the dedication behind each late-night sketch, each call to manufacturers? Would they understand that admitting imperfection was part of embracing authentic innovation? In a moment of unexpected clarity, he realized he had two choices: to shrink under scrutiny or to allow his story to breathe in the room. Jake leaned forward, his eyes locking with those around the table. I stand behind my vision because it embodies not just technology but a legacy that draws from my heritage. I believe it can transform lives beyond profit margins, he declared, his voice steadying. The room fell silent for a beat, and he could feel the air shift. Had he captured their curiosity or merely reinforced their skepticism? The tension hung palpably, thick enough to taste. "Let us discuss the next steps," one of the investors finally said, and Jake's heart soared yet uncertainty still loomed. A fusion of hope and anxiety coiled within him as he contemplated the outcome. Even if this initial meeting brought a flicker of promise, could he maintain this momentum? As he stepped back into the world outside the investor's office, the rush of human activity seemed at odds with the intense personal battle he had just fought. He realized he would need to confront not just the external resistance but also the internal frailties that shadowed him. The next challenge loomed ahead: how to secure not only buy-in from the investors but also honor his own vision in the face of potential compromises. Down the road lay an even greater hurdle: convincing others to embrace the idea of innovation rooted in personal legacy. Jake knew that the meeting had just marked the beginning. Now, each decision would require him to remain vigilant and committed to his passions. As he walked away, his mind sharpened with determination. The real test awaited just beyond the horizon. Would he emerge as the leader his vision required, or falter under the weight of expectation? Jake's feet found a rhythm on the pavement, the city around him buzzing with life, yet his thoughts remained ensnared in the recent pitch meeting. The investors' skeptical glances, the probing questions, they all echoed in his mind. Each interaction had stripped him bare, exposing not only his idea but his essence. He hadn't just been showcasing a product, he had revealed pieces of himself to strangers, bearing vulnerabilities he hadn't anticipated sharing. As he navigated through the throng of office workers, tourists, and street performers, he felt the weight of clarity settling upon him. To lead effectively, he would need to confront not only their scrutiny but his inner critics. The cycle of self-doubt he had long grappled with could no longer hold him back. He began contemplating a strategy that would honor both his ambition and his mission. At his small apartment desk that evening, surrounded by sketches, diagrams, and a mission statement that felt alive, he paused to reflect. Self-awareness had illuminated his path. He was a storyteller at heart, and his innovation was a chapter in a larger narrative about sustainable living, something that resonated deeply within him. As he scribbled notes for his next move, he questioned how to articulate that narrative to the investors, to weave together not just the threads of his product but the fabric of his identity. The challenge ahead wasn't merely financial backing, it was ensuring that his vision of changing consumer behavior and fostering environmental consciousness remained intact amid any looming compromises. He envisioned a series of workshops, not just for potential investors but for the community, to build awareness and excitement about sustainability. These workshops would serve dual purposes: creating an engaged audience and gathering insights that could further refine his pitch. With a flicker of excitement igniting his determination, Jake crafted an email to the investors. He proposed a follow-up meeting not just to discuss financials, but to introduce them to the broader implications of his vision through a collaborative workshop concept. It was a bold step, one that opened him up to more questions, but it would allow him to showcase the depth of his commitment to the cause. Jake hesitated as he hovered over the send button. Doubts whispered in his mind: what if they see it as a distraction? What if they think you're trying to avoid direct answers? But a stronger voice within urged him forward. If he didn't take this risk now, he might lose the momentum he had fought for during the pitch. He hit send. The very act of sending that email transformed the psychological landscape inside him. He felt lighter, almost as if shedding the weight of indecision. The commitment to share his vision openly and invite collaboration positioned him not just as an entrepreneur but as a leader willing to engage in dialogue. However, that newfound clarity stirred fresh uncertainties. Would the investors appreciate this approach, or would they demand immediate returns without regard for the groundwork he wanted to lay? And what if he encountered pushback? The thought ignited a flicker of fear, a sense of vulnerability creeping in once again. As he prepared for bed, he wrestled with thoughts of potential setbacks. Yet, even in darkness, a realization dawned: he had chosen to pursue authenticity over acceptance, to prioritize his vision above the mere prospect of capital. That in itself was a form of victory. With that, sleep eluded him, replaced instead by vivid dreams of future workshops filled with animated discussions and ideas flowing freely. A vision began to crystallize, a community not just buying into a product but embracing a lifestyle change rooted in sustainability. But just as he began to feel settled in this new image of progress, his phone buzzed, interrupting the peace with an email notification. The subject line read, "Response from investors urgent." Heart racing, Jake bolted upright. The moment had come to face what lay ahead. Would their reply reflect the respect for his journey, or would it shatter the aspirations he had just started to build? Jake switched on his laptop and opened the email, his fingers trembling slightly as he clicked through the sleek interface. The investors had indeed responded, their words sharp and to the point. They appreciated the initiative of the workshop proposal, noting it showcased a layer of engagement they valued but still wanted assurance regarding solid financial projections before moving forward. A rush of electricity coursed through him. They weren't dismissing him, they were testing the depth of his commitment. He leaned back in his chair, digesting their response. This wasn't simply about backing or cash flow, it was an opportunity to merge his narrative of innovation with an impactful cause. He understood now that the narrative he wanted to create wasn't merely about technology but encompassed a legacy woven from his family's struggles and triumphs. It signified a fusion of craftsmanship and purpose. The realization struck him, a profound sense of clarity illuminated the path ahead. He would present the projections they sought, yes, but he would also utilize the workshops as a medium for storytelling, for engaging others in the journey of redefining consumer habits. His journey would acknowledge the realities of business while upholding the soul of his endeavor. In the days that passed, Jake threw himself into rigorous planning, conducting in-depth market research while keeping the essence of his heritage interwoven within everything he prepared. He crafted slides that accounted for capital investment but also focused on customer engagement and social responsibility, metrics that mattered in an evolving landscape. Every late-night session in his makeshift garage office became not only a display of technical finesse but also an act of reconciliation and commitment to his roots. He wanted to prove that his invention didn't just exist for profit, it existed to propel communities forward, to inspire responsibility and awareness. He began drafting not just projections, but also compelling visual narratives, a reflection of shared aspirations shaped by family histories that preceded him. Finally, the day arrived. Jake stood at the threshold of the conference room, geared up with an aura of confidence and a sense of belonging. His heart raced not with anxiety, but with purpose. This was his opportunity to show the investors that their faith in him was not misplaced. He would present not just numbers, but the beating heart of his mission. As he commenced the presentation, Jake articulated each point with a blend of specificity and passion. He spoke clearly, bringing to light not just the facts and figures but also the story behind his endeavor, the inspirations, the journeys, and the aspirations tied to his great-grandfather's legacy. Imagine, he said, his voice rising as he connected with the audience's gaze, a world where we innovate responsibly, one that honors our history just as much as it aspires for future solutions. This invention is about simplifying lives, yes, but it's also about building a culture of community where every purchase is a step toward preserving our environment together. The room buzzed with intrigue. He could feel the shift, an energy stirring as the investors began to resonate with the narrative he spun, a blend of vision wrapped around context and engagement. They asked insightful questions born from his commitment to bringing about change. As Jake concluded, he stood tall, allowing silence to settle over the room momentarily. He felt a wave of fulfillment. This was more than just a pitch. He had fused his identity, his ambition, with familial legacy. The discussion that followed allowed for true dialogue. Investor interest transformed into collaboration, and soon conversations shifted to actionable next steps. Jake realized that he wasn't merely an innovator in that moment, he was a steward of a legacy intertwined with modern aspirations. When the meeting wrapped up, the investors expressed their support for both the prototype and the workshops, affirming that they wanted to be partners in his vision rather than just funders. It was a refreshing energy, one heralding collective growth and shared missions. As Jake exited the building, the thrumming pulse of the metropolis around him felt transformed too. He walked with a renewed sense of purpose, every step echoed growth and transformation. The weight of uncertainty had lifted, replaced with solid confidence in his identity as a visionary not just in tech, but also as a storyteller and advocate for change. In the days that followed, conversations with the investors continued, filled with discussions on how to refine their approach and amplify their shared vision. Each dialogue built towards a future that aligned passion with accountability and exhilarating prospect. The workshops became a centerpiece of the strategy, with buzz generating excitement in the community. Jake achieved his goal of embedding his family's narrative into his professional pathway. He conquered self-doubt, secured financial backing not just for a product, but for a principle. He proved to himself and others that innovation could honor the past while reshaping the future. As he stood proudly in front of a group of eager participants during the first workshop, Jake couldn't help but smile. Halfway into the session, sharing his journey and hearing the stories of others, he fully appreciated the monumental change he had navigated. His invention was not just a gadget, it had become a catalyst for meaningful connection. Each moment was a testament to what could be achieved through resilience and honoring one's roots. He had emerged not only as an accomplished inventor, but as a thought leader committed to enabling others through innovation. This was the fulfillment he had long sought, the embodiment of his heritage and ambition melding into one. The culmination of effort and intent lay before him, signaling a new chapter driven by purpose and passion, and now, it's time for you to take action. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and keep fueling these journeys of transformation. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Let us hear your thoughts. And you must share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support, and only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand its importance. Don't wait even one more second to share.